An extra agenda?
I don't, but we can just share. No. If you did have an extra agenda, that would be good, but. All right, Bill, do you want to start?
Ready to go?
I think so. I'm not sure whether Ed is going to join us or not, so.
Okay, and great. Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry I can't be there with you in person, but we changed the meeting. I've got several conflicts, so the only way I could get this done was to be by Zoom. I think Robin Fryer is probably on the Zoom. I know he's not feeling well. George, welcome. Chuck, welcome. Thanks, everybody. So the first item on the agenda after calling the meeting to order is a vote on the minutes to approve the minutes of the October 6th meeting. So can Chuck, did you make a motion on that?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, anybody opposed? Looks like the minutes were accepted. The second item on the agenda is to discuss the status of the June 30th, 2022 audit and related report. And I guess maybe we'd start by turning that over to Anne. We had given her a number of questions on the front end before the meeting, maybe to address. But Anne, could you pick up and just sort of give us a sense as to what the status is? Obviously be supported by anybody you need to from either the Board of Education or the auditors or whatever.
So currently, as I put in the email, we need to touch base back with our auditors to see the timeline for them with the requests. Last week, we did get a significant amount of requests on items that we are addressing as they come in. So
Can you guys hear okay?
here,
Just I can make it out fine. And pull the phone, just pull the mic a little bit closer to you if you would, please. Thank you. Good.
so we need to get past this past week that we got all the requests that we had coming in to see where the follow-ups are. We're working through our fixed assets. We have a couple of more things to do with that, with loading leases. They need to get into the capital asset schedule for the amortization. So the physical technology side of loading them. You know, we were in on the weekend getting all the questions we've gotten in for documents, things that we want. So once we get through that initial to say, okay, what's left? What is that list of things that they need from us? And then we'll have a better timeline.
You think everything is good with the exception of the leases?
We still have some entries to make and I still have funds that I'm hoping to get cleaned up, but if I have to hit the deadline, I may not get them cleaned up. So I would then ask Joe if there's on his side, what he's seeing on his side to say what he thinks from the aspect of the work that still needs to be done on the auditing side versus the town side.
When you say hit the deadline, what deadline you're referring to?
The extension that we just put in place for January 31st and to get a draft out to all the boards.
Yeah, I you know, unless I hear something in today's meeting, I think it's unrealistic to think that we can, I mean, you know, maybe we'll hear something, but there's a lot to be done, right, in 5 weeks with the holiday in the middle. And you know, I'm concerned that, you know, the audit committee needs a fair amount of time. You know, the report's a pretty thick report. And we generally go through it and, you know, not a criticism, but a fact. I mean, this is the first time that you will have drafted the MD&A and other parts of the report. And to think that we can get through it in less than 10 days is for me, unrealistic. So, you know, unless something happens pretty exciting with the fixed assets and with the leases, yeah, I think we should try to achieve it by the end of January, but I think you know, realistically that may not happen. I guess one of the questions I had really is say on the leases. I mean, I can distinctly remember one of our audit committee meetings where someone said we don't have that many leases. So maybe could you give us a little sense as to how many leases we have? I mean, is it a couple of dozen or a couple of hundred?
27 leases, I believe. So
27.
I will send the list out because we're still compiling it. We don't have the history. So as we go through the budget process, we're finding out about other leases. So we have 26 where entities are renting from us. And so far I have 2 on record that we're renting from others. We do have another 2 to add on, the Motorola plus the license plate reader. So we've been gathering it, but in interpreting the GASB rules, some of these don't come into play. So the auditors have assisted us in narrowing it down now to 5 that we have to get addressed and amortized onto the capital asset program.
And I guess if we have 27 leases potential, let's call it 30. I mean, this standard has been out for 18 months, right?
It's been out for about 4 years.
Been out for a couple of years. They've kept delaying it because of COVID and everything else.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, what am I missing? Why is this taking so long? I mean,
No.
and if you put out a request to I mean, however you try to accumulate the list of 27, and we still don't have a complete list. I mean, I think that, who's not responding? This is not, there's not that many people, I wouldn't think. Who's not providing you the information so we can get the job done?
I can't speak to that because I don't know, it's until they come up through a budget, someone doesn't realize that it's a lease. What we're asking is a lease because to them, they're paying it every year. So they may not think of it as a lease to what we asked for, that they've signed a contract or they have entered into something that goes across a copier, or they think of things like a copier or a printer. They're not thinking of other things in regards to that. So, we're not the only town that has had a problem trying to compile something into one place. We did have a good list that the administration had in place to start with. We're just fine tuning it. And then,
I mean, I would think if the town has people preparing a budget and they don't know whether it's a lease or not a lease, I think you and Kevin have a much bigger problem than just the lease schedule.
no, in going through this budget process, obviously this is my first time to go through a budget process for the town, so I'm only getting all the details at this point. So that's where they're coming into play when they're talking about things. We're going through a fine tooth comb in the budgets. So we're seeing what's there and that's what's coming up. And we've only found 2. That's it. And they've been recent.
I mean, it's your job to prepare the financials, my job to oversee it, but I don't get it. I just don't get it with 27 leases, with the standard being out for 4 years or 18 months, whichever number we want to use. I mean,
This isn't the only part of the audit I do have to go back to the fact that out of 6 employees, we had a turnover of 4. So the history is gone, the experience is gone, the knowledge. So there's a lot of discovery for us. So going into different funds to find out what the balances are, what they're in there, that's a lot of discovery for people who don't have that history. So there was a lot of going into that, training staff. So it's not the only thing that we're working currently on. So we've put all the staff to it. We're doing 6 days a week plus after hours to try and keep on top of just our regular work because of the turnover in staff. So the leases aren't just the only part. I think we're in a good position right now. Just need to true it up. I've been in tighter spots where we've gotten an audit closed, certainly if we have until the end of January. What's going to hold it up is that we have to have it in advance of meetings. We can definitely hit the January 31st deadline, but it's getting it to the point of what the boards want to see before.
You cannot hit, look, I know I'm being a little tough here, but you need to understand, I've been at this for 8 years, in the audit committee, and we're back to where we were 8 years ago. And I'll just be truthful. I thought we had 2 employees that turned over, not 4 employees, but whatever the numbers are, it's fine. I mean, 27 leases, I could probably do it on an Excel worksheet in a couple of hours.
But
It's not complicated.
Well, let me address something here. So when I think leases, in my 5 years as first elected, I think other than the Board of Education financing leases, which we've done a lot of, they're just financing transactions. But we have we have real property leases that go back 40 years. We have the nature center, we have the schoolhouse apartments, we have land leases, we have, but, you know, but they're mostly historical. I mean, it's not as though we do, I can't recall the last time I signed a lease. You know, we had a playoffs lease, but that was terminated. We have a new playoff lease that we just signed a few weeks ago. We don't have that many leases. Most of them are historical. So when Ann talks about going back to find them, we really are going back to history. And no one really had any need to, you know, by the way, a lot of these leases are $1 a year. So it's kind of crazy. We're even.
Right.
And certainly there's some things, if you'd like to discuss on why the audit is where it is at this point, I'm very happy to executive session and discuss with the committee on different findings and things like that if you'd like, but I think it needs to be done. I think what we're going through needs to be done, and you know, the reason we need the extension is because of the circumstances of staff turnover on the auditor side as well. They have their staffing issues, which they mentioned at the meeting for their contracts. So I'm surprised to think that we wouldn't be able to get an audit closed by January 31st. I've done it myself for probably 15 years and under the crunch of getting it done by December 31st.
I would also say, Bill, that, you know, for example, public works, we don't do any leasing of equipment for public works. We buy equipment. We happen to lease copiers, you know, why we do that. It's really a maintenance contract. So there, you know, there's nothing really here of any significance, but it does require work.
No, I agree, Kevin. I fully agree with you. That's why I'm so surprised that it's taking so long. And, you know, with all the money the town has spent, you know, I mean, I can remember sitting as an observer at one of the town council meetings when Penny was running a project to inventory all the fixed assets of the town. And I would assume that, I mean, I didn't look, you know, I have no reason to look at that, but I would assume that there would be, we would know whether, you know, whatever you mentioned, the nature center or something was, whether we owned it or was a lease. I would assume somebody would have done that at that particular point in time. But you know, I really do think that either not understanding, I mean, I just having employees that don't understand whether it's a lease or not a lease, making it hard to pull out is, I think really says not good things about the employee base. Now, if that's the case, that's the case. That's where we are. But then the flip side would be if they all know it, then we have 27 leases. Like I said, this is, you know, I mean, and some of them, you know, would. So look, okay. I mean, we are where we are. I mean, maybe what about, you mentioned something about the fixed assets. I know, has that been recreated? And you know, we want to get this right, but I mean, you know, we're 6 months after year end. We're almost close. I mean, we're pretty close to closing next year. I mean, we're closer to closing next year than we are to last year. And I realize employees have turned over, but some of this stuff is actually computerized.
No, I mean, like I said before, if you'd like to go into executive session to discuss some of the things in discovery that I've gone through, I'm more than happy to do that so you can understand the length of time that it's taken so far, on top of having new employees, training new employees. I'm covering my own employees because they're doing the training. So I'm certainly happy to tell you the detail. I don't know if you shared with the rest of the committee when we had talked, when I brought up the different things that I was up against when I came in.
Yeah, no, I'm you know, I just focus on leases. I realize there's been a number of balance sheet accounts that are out of balance or had been out of balance. I talked to Joe about that. You know, but okay.
There was a lot of discovery and analysis that had to be done, and reconciliation between the system and the CAFR, and that takes a long time with new staff.
Yep.
I know you've had an awful lot of bad luck with people leaving for greener fields. Have we thought at all about bringing some folks on a per diem or per hour basis to get us over the hump?
We had, well, I balanced that. We did. The administration, when I brought up different things, the administration, Kevin and HR were very helpful and got me staff in and staff internally that knows the system. The problem is getting someone in who knows what to do as opposed to sitting training someone different. So we have had people come in and still have someone working with us on weekends to get on top of things. Our processes, the processes in the office are extremely manual. So we have silo systems. They're not talking to each other, which is something I will fix. But right now the push is to bear down and just get it all done and get the information and get the books up to date because we have a good solid staff now. I feel we have a good solid team on place and everybody's jumping in, but it's just getting through this really challenging time of we're trying to catch up for the time we lost with the employees that were gone and getting that replacement and training. So we're catching up with that, plus then trying to do the new year, plus trying to do all the cleanup. So this year, I look at this year as the difficult year, so that this time next year, we're not in that same position. But the administrator, Kevin and HR and even the department heads have been very supportive because they know what we're going through to try and get the work out. It's just been a very difficult, challenging time to go in to clean up things.
Yeah, Joe, have you looked at the lease information at all? And do you have any comments as to where you think things are?
Again, we have gone through, I think I talked to Catherine, there might have been just a couple, down to a couple questions or these other couple that just showed up, but we've gone through the majority of those. And again, you know, the 27, a lot of the dollar leases, they don't qualify, but just from the audit perspective, we just have to evaluate all the leases and so that, you know, down to what's going to hit the financials is a much smaller number. But we've pretty much gone through and audited those, I think, except for the two new ones, or maybe
Joe, I mean, you say you have to evaluate each lease. I mean, if you were to take a company like Oracle, which has $50 billion of revenue, you know, they probably have, you know, 20,000 leases. I mean, I can assure you that they don't evaluate each one of them, right? I mean, they have cutoffs, they have materiality. So how do you look at it in the towns when you evaluate these? I mean, there might be towns that have more than 27. Do you look at every single one of them?
Well, no, if it's a dollar lease, we kind of stop at that point, but just, so if there's a lease we're provided, it's $1, we don't do any additional work at that point because the standard's pretty clear that you don't capitalize. So when I say evaluate, it's just that, okay, we know there's a lease, it's $1, we're done. So the evaluation is, you know.
When you say $1, you mean literally $1, it's $1 a year or something? Or
Yeah, a lot of the leases that the town is doing is they're leasing to others for $1 a year. The town's not charging. So that takes it out of the equation on the lessor side or on the lessee side if there's releasing anything for $1. So when I say evaluation, it's a 10-second evaluation. It's $1 lease. We don't need to do any accounting or disclosure on that. So it's just year one, this part of the process to understand we have and move on. But there is a materiality and most everyone is using the capitalization threshold because the lease, if it's a $2,500 lease over 10 years, that's above your capitalization threshold because the other side is an asset. So, you know, so from that perspective, if it's hitting that threshold, then we're recording the lease, even though the lease is probably not material to those top statements, but the asset is within the town's policy. So that's the evaluation threshold that we use.
so if you have a lease, if you're leasing I don't know, a park to or whatever, you know, to the nature center for $1 a year, and that lease has been around for, you know, 30 years or 20 years or 50 years. From an audit standpoint, what do you do with, forget about the leasing standard, just from an audit standpoint, does anybody ever look at that? Does that just sort of, you know, because I mean, you have an enormously valuable asset potentially that you're leasing, you know, for a de minimis amount, let's say $1. Do we, from an audit standpoint, you know, pre-lease accounting or next year, something that sort of bothers me that, you know, how do you audit that asset? you know, is it expected to be recorded on the fixed asset ledger at fair value less some reserve, or, I mean, or do people not care about it because it's just $1?
Well, the asset is recorded at whatever, historical cost. So it's a town asset. So that part's recorded. You just have
So
to.
let's just say let's say it's, you know, it was a donation. Let's say it was, I don't know, Irwin Park. Let's say the fair value at the time was donated. Person took a tax deduction of, let's say, $50 million or $20 million. So what does the town do? Record it at, they say 20?
At the 20 million, right? Whatever the approximate, estimated fair value is at date of donation. Yes.
Okay, so it's on our books somewhere for 20 million?
Yes.
And then we leased it. I mean, I don't know if we would lease that park to the nature center, let's say, or to the YMCA or to whatever for $1. So just help me think through what the next level of accounting is. So it's on the books for 20 million. We now lease it for $1. What happens? Where does this get recorded? How, forget about how we do it. How should it be done?
Well, there is really no additional accounting other than conceptually recording that dollar as rental income every year. But there's no other accounting. The asset will be depreciated because it's a town asset. So that's happening along the way. And then the dollar rental, those are the only accounting transactions that would get recorded.
So how do we know that, since we had trouble, this is not the accounting department's, the new people's fault, but just sort of looking historically, since we really had no idea of all the leases we had. I mean, how do we know there's not other leases out there how do we know that we have the 27 is the total population?
Bill, I'm pretty confident, based upon my knowledge, the last 5 years, that it's a very limited number. And it's kind of crazy, I think, for example, we lease Kiwanis Park to the YMCA for the summer months. In some cases, we call it a license. I'm not sure if we call something a license. We're even talking about leases. I don't know, but and literally, there's no leases on Irwin Park, and we purchased the property. What's it going?
Yeah, no, I got that, but what I'm trying to get at, Kevin, is just forget about the leasing standard and the bookkeeping we're talking about. How do we know that somebody just isn't leasing an asset that belongs to the town to somebody? Just what's the control over that, Joe?
So in going through the budget, because I wasn't in the budget season last year, going through it this year, we're going line by line on everyone's budgets, asking outside contractors, we're asking what they are. And to date, there's only been 2 that were new leases, that what we would have considered 2 leases, the license plate reader and Motorola. And that falls out through the process of the budget season. And then going forward, we have mechanisms now in place that when something is signed, it goes directly to finance. So it really wasn't so much, we didn't know where the leases were. There was a good list to start with. There definitely was a good list. It was what else is out there so that we could give everything to the auditor. And getting the appropriate documents, and some of these documents were old. So
yes, what I'm getting at when you say there was a good list. How do we know that the list was a good list? How do we know there weren't other leases that just weren't on that list?
We had a book. We had a book in accounting with like 12 leases. Documents, right?
Right.
I've never seen a list in my 5 years here. So it doesn't matter. Finance kept track of them in a binder. And when you talk about like Motorola, that's public safety radio where it's really a maintenance contract. It's a software contract. Some of these things, I don't know if we even talk about them, honestly.
Right.
So
we just have to let the auditors know. That's it. They may not even, they don't come into play.
Well, they will next year though.
Yeah, well, you'll have them on the list.
Just a quick question, and Robin, Bill, you don't have this. Ann gave me this morning.
Yes,
Which
and
I
I'll get
think,
an email
which
out
I
to
think
everyone.
is a list of the 30 leases or whatever, right?
We'll add the other 2 on
Is
now.
this a
Yes,
list?
that's it.
Most of them are what you would call lessors. Is that correct?
Sorry?
27 of them are lessor,
Um,
even though it says lessee. In other words, the first ones are all town-owned assets,
sorry,
right?
26.
Are those the first list, the first page? Is that all town-owned assets?
Yes,
right? It says renting from the town.
yes,
So that means the town is the lessor, is that right?
yes,
So the
playhouse.
town
yes,
is least theoretically leasing potentially to somebody else.
In case of parks, parkland, we can't
Yeah,
dispose of, so.
but whatever, just from a very
Yeah,
high
yeah.
level.
Yeah,
So they're
and
they're
there's-
properties, they're mainly
Right,
properties.
but it's, we own the property and leasing it, let somebody else use it
Yes,
for some, maybe some fee, maybe not. whatever,
correct.
Right? And then there's a list of two, which I don't know, potentially could be, they're both labeled lessees. But, and I, for example, I don't see the office space for the school system.
The 220 Elm is on there.
Is
We
that on
own it.
there? Where is
No,
that?
no, no, you
Or,
put 39 local,
Where is that?
39 local.
Oh, the 30 line locus, we just sent that on. This has to be added to 39 locus are ones that were signed after the audit time, so we're adding those on now.
So
This
So I'm-
Board of Ed leads. They-
So I'm not missing it.
Oh, they weren't forward. When we asked the Board of Ed, we got 2 different leases, so that was it.
Right, but I'm not missing it. It's not on here.
Uh,
I mean, that would be what I would think would be the biggest dollar lease that we have.
That's the biggest dollar. We had.
And yet it doesn't show up on here.
Yeah, it's in the state, this is the first time seeing this, train station, we don't even know the train station, it's a state property. So I, some of these are done. Really,
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And obviously the way to check all the leases, right, is to look at the lease expense. And see what you're paying
Right.
for lease
Well, that's what I'm
expense.
looking at outside contractors and different ones, so, and then we sent the emails out to the department, the Board of Eds, we sent it out to everyone saying, please let us know your leases.
Right, but that would be right out of either you're paying money to a less
We take an income. in.
or theoretically you're receiving money from a lessee.
So the 27 includes the Board of Ed as well?
They should.
It should be on, it should be here.
Doesn't the Board of Ed lease
And I don't know the new property.
computer equipment?
That wasn't included in it. The financial lease on that one,
every year they do.
yeah, they do the financial lease.
They do $600,000 with that. That's either equipment for. It's a financial lease. It's a finance. Our financing lease is covered by this.
What do if you think about financing leases as being what previously was called capital leases,
And it's a
I
finance.
mean, those should theoretically be accounted for in the past, the way that you need to account for all leases today.
And they come with a non-appropriation clause, so it doesn't mean that you are locked into that for the full 5 years. Most of them.
I would say of all these, the only two significant financial ones are the Board of Ed.
Yeah.
Which the lease for their office space.
Right.
And the 220 Alden ground lease, which was $210,000 a year with Bankwell.
Is that the new space? No.
No, that's just, that's the, what's the Bankwell headquarters building? We
Oh,
own the property,
down.
we own the ground, so that was a significant financial, otherwise these are all rather insignificant.
And is that on here? Is
That terminated last year when we acquired.
the other Bankwell lease or whatever, is that on here?
The 220 Elm?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, where's that?
I'll go through these. Yeah. Okay. Let me make sure. Cherry Street, not holdings. We
Maybe,
have, so of the
maybe-
5 the auditors have, they have 39 Locust Street. They have Cherry Street. There's 5 different ones right now that they have
where's that?
that was narrowed down. It's on a different file, so we'll get that file. to you
Okay,
as
so that's
well.
not on here.
Yeah.
I'm not missing some. Okay,
Because that's a moving target list that we did, and then we finalized it down to 5.
why don't we
Okay, well, when we move.
move
What
on?
about fixed
We-
a- what about fixed assets? You okay on fixed assets?
Fixed assets, the pool fund asset has to be loaded up. That doesn't seem to have ever been loaded up in the past, so we're working on what that asset is to get it on because of the fund that the pool fund is under. So all the other ones, the.
What do you
sewer
mean it
and just-
wasn't there in the
So
past?
the type of fund that it is, I think offhand, proprietary, I forget, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong. It needs to have its assets loaded and it didn't have the assets loaded onto its balance sheet previously.
So you mean it was not on the town's balance sheet? in the past?
I don't know the exact numbers. I'd have to look for it again. We're looking into seeing where those assets are.
They were in the financials, it just weren't in the fixed asset system. It might have been, I think they were being done offline. So it was just part of the process of auditing fixed assets. We just asked for the updated numbers for the pool because it is a proprietary enterprise fund. It's supposed to recover all costs, including capital. So that's the way it was set up. Doesn't have to be that way, but that's the way it is. So the assets are recorded there versus up top in the fund versus just on the top statements.
So the financial statements last year or each month we did this, they were right. And but we had a technology system and a worksheet or an Excel worksheet that we had to combine. And now we're going to have everything just going to be in the computerized financial system. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. We're loading those assets in.
Was the last year's numbers right?
Yes.
On your audit, yes. In the financials, they were not in the software system.
They were not in the system, but there was an adjustment made to get the financial statements right. But I'm not suggesting that's the best way of doing it. I'm just trying to understand last year's numbers that we reported to whomever read them were correct or was reasonably correct.
I'd have to defer to Joe on that one.
Is that what I'm hearing, Joe?
Yes. Just appreciate, you don't really have a lot of capital asset activity, so most likely it was just depreciation expense that was being calculated offline. And
Okay.
I think it's been done as an audit adjustment every year.
Okay.
So on those two things, is there any thinking as to when those might be?
Hoping within the next 2 weeks, we've got to load them in, finalize so we can get the schedules. Because without putting them in, we can't get the right reports out. We have
Are
all
you,
the general fund.
is everybody here during the Christmas holiday and stuff?
The people that we need, yes, for this process.
So you're thinking,
I'm hoping within, like I said, the next 2 weeks to have, all because we have to just make sure that we're capturing all the assets versus what was just pulled in from last year.
and does that include, tying out the systems and?
Yes, we tied out the general fund and the sewer. They're completely tied out to what last year's were, so we could load them into the system. We're currently undergoing a software conversion as well. So that's happening on the 22nd of December.
What's software conversion for?
We're upgrading from, we're going from 11 point something to 21.5. It's sunsetting, so we have to migrate to that. So once we do that upgrade, we are then going to load all the assets into live, so it's actually in the right system. So we have a lot of things going on right now
Yeah,
in terms of what we're trying to get done. But yeah, the assets. will
and
be
to
done.
Bill's point, that's just,
Well, it depends. I need to see the list from the auditors once they get through everything they need to do on what they're still looking for. Then I'll know from a
but
snap.
the first thing is to make sure that, that you're happy that everything is right. And the
I will-
auditors shouldn't have any. I mean, they should just be looking at it, right?
Well, I will.
They're not, they shouldn't be doing it.
All the funds will not be fully analyzed, the historical side of it.
And do they need to be?
Yes. They need to
And-
be.
What is the timing on that?
Well, that's going to take some time with, going through, finding out what the issues are, why they're there and how to clear them up.
Do you have a list of like open things that need to be done?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
time and estimated completion and
I don't have an
all
estimated
that
completion on them
kind of stuff
because
so that you can figure out.
they won't
you
get
know.
done for the audit because we're also in budget season, plus we're also doing financials and some other stuff. So they're very lengthy ones to clean up. And then in top of setting up new processes. Because like I said, everything is so manual. So it's a lot of resources being used for manual and key punching. So we're trying to get that all up to date so I can get it automated. The resources there.
And how about the other parts of the financial statements? So we've got the fixed assets and leases, which kind of, are a component of the relatively small component of the of the financial statements. And
So-
the whole rest of the financial statements, what's kind of the status of
Well, I would
of
refer to
that
Joe on what
and
they're
the audit thereof.
all the balance sheets, I've cleaned all the balance sheets except for 3. So I just have 3 more to go through, but they're smaller. The general fund has been completely clean, other than 2 accounts that still need to be addressed. They're gonna take a longer time period, but they're balance sheet items, not P and L. But until I get the list from the auditors, I don't know what else they're looking for.
Joe, Joe is, or Ann, is that holding you up getting the list, or Joe? And if it
No.
is, Joe, no?
Not at all, not at all. No, they have been sending us as they come up with questions, they're sending them right away, and we're trying to get back to them right away. No, I don't mean to put it in that
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. I got,
not at all. It's just, we're going back and forth as they send us up, we send it back, they come back with questions. So we're trying to do that. I just, not being here for a full year yet, I don't know the process. I should.
Yeah. I was hopeful coming out of this meeting. Well, I was actually hopeful going into this meeting, certainly coming out, that we could, have a real good calendar as to when we would actually, have a closed financials, draft financials, audited financials. So we actually could set a schedule with the town council and the Board of Finance and the audit committee and so on. So how close or far away are we from getting a schedule so we can really set some dates, committee meetings and other things like that?
Well, as you know, I sent the email stating that I wasn't sure what the deadlines were going to be once we get through, and the auditors and I sit now and say, okay, what's left for them? What do they need? What do we have to get them? And then we can do it. So I'm hoping, Joe, correct me if within the next week or 2, we can solidify a calendar.
Yep, that should be doable. Again, we're looking at stuff as it comes in, and that generates whatever questions or just requests for what we need to do for audit work, because until we have the information.
Right.
Most of the rest of the report is in the document, so now it's the audit process and going through, and that's generating as we go through an area. Then we send the requests, as I mentioned immediately. It's okay, we did this, we need backup for this or this or this. So that process is just the normal audit process.
Yeah, so, I mean, we're on December 12th, right? So if can we kind of set a target at which we think that we'll have a schedule that might list, here's like the list that you have going, right? Just have some completion dates and and then that can go into the dates at which you're going to have the books done, the audit done, the availability of the entire document, the MD&A, the transmittal, all those things that would be on the list of things to do. And then from that, be able to have a schedule that Bill was just talking about. I think that would say, look, here's when we're going to have this and this and this, and then we'd be able to, have some dates at which we're hopefully working towards and monitoring them. If they slip, then, have, current sessions on what that means. And then, we can schedule stuff and see. But to Bill's point, the way I see it is you've got town council meeting at the end, you've got Board of Finance meeting before that, you've got audit committee meeting, at least one meeting before that. And you've got, some review time, as Bill said, before that. And you've got the completion of the financials, you've got the completion of the audit, you've got all those kinds of things that.
How about the MD&A, which is,
That drafting and everything else. So, I really think if we don't have it, to have that detailed list of stuff that needs to be done and who's working on it, when's the deadline, just, and then we can see where we stand. And
My recollection is that there's an inordinate amount of time put into the CAFRA and the page after page after page of data that is not particularly meaningful. Is there any way we can get excused from some of this stuff?
Yeah.
There is a lot more than we need to put in there. There are schedules in there that aren't required by, if we're doing it from an AFR standpoint, there are things in there we don't need. And some of the write-ups are very lengthy. They don't need to be that level from an AFR standpoint. I don't know if that was a preference in the past to do it that way, but when I read it, it was.
when you say write-ups, you're referring to what?
There's different schedules. The MD&A in itself, instead of maybe one page or a couple of paragraphs on something, there's multiple pages on something. You don't see it to that level usually. And Joe, you can correct me because you see them all the time, but I've never seen one as lengthy as our one.
And I think that's, I know Joe's going to chime in, but that's actually my concern. That's actually what I articulated before when we first started, is some of those things which may not be necessary. I mean, the process for government accounting is terrific, but I'm not sure that all of the towns would be held to the very best standard. And, we think we have a pretty high standard. So while I'm sure there are things we could take out of the report, and I'm sure the things we would take out of the report if was sort of left to the committee, there's been 10 years of things, of discussion and things being put in there and written the way they are with a purpose. And what I'm concerned about is that in a rush to get done by January 31st, we're going to get presented to the audit committee report, which takes out a lot of stuff that we've spent 10 years putting in. And I'm not, I'm flexible enough to understand that, in fact, maybe some stuff should be taken out or changed after 10 years. Certainly things should be changed. But I'm really concerned, Joe and Ann, about the process that we use to get to those conclusions. And I'm, been around long enough to know that there's a risk of getting a report, which we say, my God, this is like something so far different from what we expect. So that's why understanding the process and the timing to bring this to fruition is really important. I'll give you one example. 10 years ago, on the teacher's pension, there was one sentence, and there's a lot more today. And I don't think we'd go back to one sentence. Doesn't mean we couldn't change something. So we need to build a process that allows some time for discussion and some time for review. And I don't see that happening. And that's why I was jumped on the January date, because I assume, I don't know, I can look it up on the calendar, but I assume the finance committee and the town council would meet, somewhere around January 15th, give or take a few days, January 20th. And that doesn't seem like a lot of time given where we are and with the Christmas holidays there. Have we started drafting the MD&A yet?
No.
No. I think we've got, I think we have a long way to go. I'm not saying we're not in a good spot. I'm not saying we're not going to be better when we get finished this process than we were last year. And, certainly we would all applaud that. But as it relates to the single task of getting a report out, I really think that we need to get some dates, on a piece of paper. And I'm not sure, Joe, if you're the obstacle, then you got to get it. I realize staffing is an issue for everybody, for every company in the world, to be quite truthful with you. No, that's not true for a lot of companies. But somehow we got to get a schedule built with this time. So
would it make sense to try to, maybe not today, but shortly after this meeting to get back with, a date at which,
Well, Joe and I can get together now and see what's needs to be done and what scheduling.
and
We have some stuff we were working on over the weekend that we got back to them. And as we said, it's a back and forth on the questions.
I don't understand how we can't have some target dates already set. It just, I'm not sure what I'm missing, but I mean, every single company in the world that I work with, that I've worked with, has a target date by when we're going to file, and it's a project management exercise. It's as to critical dates, and are we going to hit the critical dates? And if we don't, we put more resources. Do what George said, go out and hire some people on a temporary basis or whatever. Opposed to just meandering on to, I'm sympathetic to the auditor's problem, staffing problem, but being sympathetic and just telling them to get their job done is, if it's Joe's the problem, I would say just get your job done.
Bill, I'm not sure I really think we need to sit down and discuss the level of what I walked into. So.
I got it, but
I need to stress
but
that.
we
I
need
need to stress that the level and coming in with all new staff and picking up and trying to figure out the books to the level they were in has been very difficult. I understand that you want the deadline.
I got it.
To do it. Joe and I will meet together to make sure that deadline will be met. But I need this committee to understand the level of work that my staff has put in to get to this point with all 4 out of 6 new staff members. That seems to be getting lost. I've never worked in a firm where I had that many staff turnover with no history, nothing. And the administration here has been nothing but supportive, the department heads, but I do need some support from this audit committee to understand what we're going through, to say, we will get it done.
and
Joe and I will get it done, and we will get dates within a week or two, but I do have to stress that. I'm sorry.
I think from the audit committee's perspective, all we're doing is wanting to understand what your timing is. That you have a plan to get there. We don't, it could be March, right? The thing that I think bothers us is we just kind of say, look, there's no target dates that we think we can achieve.
Well, that's what I said in my
Best we
email,
can
that I
tell.
wouldn't have a target date till after this meeting because of what we're going back and forth. And I'm not saying anything with the orders. I'm saying our back and forth right now, we need to regroup and say, okay, where are we? What do we think we need to get and where we are? But I will get in another week or two,
Okay,
so that we had it.
because-
We need some time to get through that versus I wouldn't have had a timeline today. And I said that in the email.
Yeah, but we didn't say that 2 weeks ago or whatever. Okay.
I mean, when we were together the last time we talked, look, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I think Joe, I think
part of
Joe said it right. When we met at the last meeting, we talked about there being coming up with a timeline. I asked Joe to come up with a timeline. And I think what I don't want to do is have an unrealistic deadline, whatever the deadline is. In fact, I think January is unrealistic. I think we should just declare that. Yeah, I just, maybe I'm wrong if you come up with the deadline, if you can do that, but I think January is unrealistic. And I understand the turnover and different things of that nature we're talking about, but to be truthful, there's something I don't understand. I don't understand the 27 leases being a problem 4 years later, but maybe it is because I'm pretty old and I haven't done that stuff.
It's not a problem. We just have to gather the documents. And, obviously it's not the only thing we're working on, but you have to gather all the documents. It's all the pieces. And every time I pick up another fund and I go through discovery, I go down another rabbit hole of trying to clean it up. So it's going through. I can get the books out, but I will not be able to say that I feel that those books are clean and those balance sheets are clean.
No, we want you to be able to say that. That's what I mean when we're finished. But I guess, Ann, what I'm getting at is if the department heads and other people in the town can't help you understand what the leases are, then I think we have a bigger problem than it's a little bit circular. If you're the only person in town that can figure out what the lease is, that's a big problem.
Bill, could I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah. So this is my third year on this committee. The last 2 years, we met the deadline of the 31st of December, no problem. The other three of you here on the committee have been around a lot longer. I think back in times when we were unable to meet the December deadline. It sounds to me as though the deadline is actually January if you get an automatic 1 month extension. If I understand it correctly, but what happens if we can't make January? We all hope to make January. I've listened to this entire conversation, but how does the process work if you can't get it done by January? I think this town has been there before, but not in my time on the committee.
It's another extension. This time it's signed and it's an application that you do on the website, and it's another application for a continued month.
Is that more of a thing that needs to be approved, or is it?
No, it just goes
Pretty much
through.
automatic.
Yeah, it goes through a signature with the first selectman.
Does that have any implications for anything?
Nope. Nope, it's just another deadline.
Not
Other than
state
maybe,
or
I don't
the-
know, for Joe with the federal and state audits, their deadlines, I don't know if it changes that at
So
all,
there's-
but
There's no real implications from any bonding or any kind of stuff like that.
No.
It wouldn't have any implication for credit ratings, things like that, the fact that we can't get financials out on a timely basis.
no, because we're actually going out in January, and originally I had said I want to get the financials before we go out to bond, but our bond counsels or bond person had said with New Canaan, that's not a problem at all. That's not a problem
Okay.
because it would be standard to say you had staff turnover. It's an industry problem right now with actually all industries, so it wouldn't be a problem for Moody's.
All right, thanks.
That's the point that it's just not the financial. We plan to go to the bond market in January, February. We also are in the budget season, right? Budgets takes a lot of time for and you're getting up to speed on a lot of accounts, a lot of business issues you didn't understand. So I just think it doesn't sound like we're gonna make January meetings, but we should shoot February meetings.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'd still shoot for January, but if it's not, it's gonna be February, but January would be done. I would still shoot for it, but
I would sit down and just make a realistic timetable, and if that goes, realistically goes to February, then
yes, because it's gonna be building around the meetings. So I'll definitely, Joe and I will talk within the next week or so and get that solidified.
So Bill, I mean, now I understand the situation if you go beyond January, and the consequences are, I mean, it's sounds so it's easy enough to get a further extension, and there are no real consequences for getting the report out, say February, say March. I mean, I think, as you said right at the beginning, we need to be realistic. I agree, we should take another couple of weeks for Joe and Ann and her team and Kevin to figure out what is realistic, but let's not put ourselves under undue pressure and set a timetable that is unrealistic. We don't need to do this. So
Well, I
if it has
guess,
to be-
look, I started out by saying, I don't think we can get it done in January, but I think it's, look, I'm not, this is up to Kevin, and for the Board of Ed, but I mean, I just, and I realized, we had a lot of problems, a lot of extenuating circumstances, maybe we couldn't get there. But the concept of missing deadlines is just not acceptable to me.
No,
I mean,
I agree. I agree.
There are 20,000 companies that have an SEC filing deadline. 19,998 of them make it. And they've all said, I'm not blaming it on Ann, I'm not blaming anything. I'm just saying, I think philosophically, the idea of, it's okay to miss December, it's okay to miss January. It's okay, if we file in February and the bond counsel telling you it doesn't matter. I mean, if I don't mind saying this publicly, I couldn't understand for 1 second why an underwriter or bond counsel would tell you that it's okay to be 3 months late past the 6-month deadline in your financials and still be able to rely on your financial statements. It's incomprehensible to me that would be the case. But, that's their profession. I just think it's the wrong thing for us to be in this particular position, however we got here. And I think when we get all said and done, working with Ann and working with Kevin, we should go back and really take a look at this and If there were some things wrong in the past, we should understand it. But I mean, it's just the wrong answer for just, I'm looking out, I mean, it's sort of like the Public Works Department saying, we're sorry we missed today's snow, but we'll come in next month. I mean, it just can't be. It just can't be, so it's, so that's what's concerning me. It's not the fact that, it's not I know sooner or later we'll get the financial statements done, but the idea that it's okay to be, file a report 8 months after the year end. I don't get it.
Bill, I agree with you. I don't like to go past the December 31st deadline, and I have always thrived in my career to make sure it was done by December 31st. I have driven to superintendents' homes on Christmas Eve to get signatures.
Sure.
Documents. So I do want to get it, filed and in place. But I worked for hedge fund industry. We closed in 3 days. It happened. You worked till 2 a.m, you got it done. That's a different industry, and it's different technology, and it's different processes that are already in place. We don't have those processes in place. We're manual. Once we have those processes in place, I will guarantee you that we will file every December 31st, and we'll have the books turned over by October. So we're just not in that place. We have not been in that place for a number of years because of the way it's been so manual. But it will change, and we will do it, but I need this year.
Okay, I'm supportive, of you got to get to where you got to get to, and there's nothing else we can do. So why don't we just conclude? We'll get the schedule we're going to get, but I just think it sends the wrong message for the accounting department, for the finance department to miss its deadlines. And it's not about you. I mean, this is probably the third time we've done it in 10 years, maybe the fourth. And so, some messaging here that's an issue. So anyway, it's not, don't get me wrong, it's not the current administration. We had that with, former selectmen. And so I think doing a deep dive, we can finish and understanding what we can do. And Joe, I guess I'd really like to hear from you and your firm, not today, but, you and I've discussed this. What is it we missed here to create this problem? Because, did you tell us something in the past that we didn't hear? Or did you not tell us something? And so, I'll give you a little time to think about that, and then Ann can decide whether we do this in a public session or we do it in a private session if we're going to be talking about people. But it's not a good place for us to be in.
All right, and just to kind of reiterate that February is a more critical deadline for secondary market disclosures. So that's the date that we don't want to miss. And I don't anticipate that will be a problem, just some of the lead time. And, worst case scenario, again, subject to timing and getting information, maybe it's the first week in February. Or again, if we have to wait for the boards, but that's a process. I mean, the boards don't approve anything. It's an independent audit. So that's just.
I want to be clear. I know I'm being a little tough, and I'm sorry about that, but you're not going to be waiting for the boards. I can assure you that the audit committee will move along, the town council will move along, the finance committee will move along very, very quickly, but they do need a little time to read the material that you're going to send them because it is pretty thick. So yes, you'll have to wait a few days to give people a chance to read it. And what's very helpful is to tell people when they're going to get it so they can get it into their schedule.
Right. But I mean, if you're waiting for a scheduled meeting versus if we get you the draft on January 30th, are we waiting for a meeting for the middle of the month for the board? That's all I'm just saying. You're going to have it in plenty.
Yeah. The town council meeting will be whenever it's scheduled, that's when it'll be. And the finance committee will probably same thing as well. So, but okay, good.
The worst case is it's just close to the end of the month, I think, and that you'll have plenty of time before those meetings to review it.
Right. Okay. So Chuck, where do you want to go from here? We in one form or another, we've covered a lot of this agenda.
Yeah, I think as far as the financial statements, we'll just wait. We'll wait to hear from you.
You'll get
And
updated.
when do you think
We
you'll?
have the October ones for you, but The Octobers were a couple of weeks
Yeah.
behind, so you'll have the,
But as far as
November.
just closing this off, when do you think you'll get back to us? By the end of the year, by Christmas? On the scheduling? like
oh,
we just
no,
talked.
within the next 2 weeks, Joe and I can go through it and get a
So 2
schedule down.
weeks, that's
Yeah.
like the
And we'll send it out to
day
the
after,
committee.
day after Christmas.
Well, before, I'd rather have it out.
Christmas.
Nice Christmas
No, I
present, so you
understand.
have your schedule, but
It's always
will-
nice to have dates, that's all.
No,
You can tell that we kind of like dates.
Yep.
Um,
I do too. It's just been very difficult. Yep.
I know, but just be, if it's gonna be January 5th, then January 5th.
No,
right?
we'll work
Just
it- we'll work
whatever it
it.
is. Okay. Yeah, I think from the internal financial perspective, which I think you both sent October, is there anything in particular that anybody would like to highlight? From either the schools or, from the town, not necessarily running down the thing, but anything that kind of is of interest.
Really nothing. I mean, October is really the second full month of the year, excluding July and August, which is really nothing months relatively. But I think we're going according to budget. I do a monthly attainment analysis, and right now it shows a marginal increase year to year, and our expense attainment of budget is slightly above last year. But I attribute that primarily to timing differences. So other than that, nothing really.
Okay, yeah, and thank you for, sending stuff.
Sure. We hope to have
Appreciate it.
November completed this week.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Same with October for us was lagging because of our timeline with processes, but we're presenting the November ones to the Board of Finance tomorrow night, so you'll have them Wednesday morning. They'll be sent out to you Wednesday morning,
And are
but
there
nothing of concern, but I'll do a summary page. for you.
Revenues and so on are all holding.
Revenues other than obviously interest income right now, but most of the revenues are coming in.
Good. I mean, Bill, I think that those were, I think the only other thing was if Ann wanted to spend just a minute on the, budget process and, the fact that that's moving along and kind of the timing, and maybe if there are targets out there yet. I don't know if there has been
There were
the letter
targets.
sent to everybody with targets and stuff.
The Board of Finance set targets back in their November, I think it was 19th meeting. The town, for both the town and Board of Ed, the town was excluding the benefits was 275. And the Board of Ed was 2.75 for the town and 2.9 for the Board of Ed, excluding benefits on both groups. The town.
As far as percentage increase. you're talking
Percentage
about.
increase. And then the town side on the budget process, the last 2 weeks, we've actually just gone through all the departments with the administration to go through each individual department. So now we're moving on to the next level.
I mean, so that's good. So that's all spelled out in the minutes of the,
In the Board of Finance, they
Finance?
have them under their budget section, their
is there a
guidance.
letter that was sent out or something?
Seems
like there's always has been.
Remember a letter going out to anyone
No,
else? No,
okay,
it's in the minutes.
so just in the minutes.
Yeah,
whatever
on
that
the
is.
November 19th.
And so you just have your, everybody's looking at their budgets and coming up with it, and you're going through your processes and so on.
Exactly, plus the 5-year capital plan.
Plus that, and working towards what kind of a date? For completion?
The next dates were in January. I'll get that out to you tomorrow when I send
Completion
it.
by,
I'll get I don't have the dates on the top of
Okay.
my head. I'll get the full dates out to you when I send out the
Okay.
financials.
okay,
So we're on track.
Yeah.
We started with the board of selectmen the second week of January.
January's around that.
And then we'll pass the proposed budget on to the board of finance by the 5th. February, and then they'll look at the budget at the end of the month. Town council, and then pick it up tomorrow.
March timeframe.
But so far, we're looking at, since most of the collective bargaining agreements are already in place, primarily energy costs, inflation, and purchase services, and things like that. So, but,
But your 2.7 or whatever you mentioned, that includes salaries.
Yes, everything
Just
but just
doesn't, didn't
medical.
include maybe some, the finalization of the benefit medicals.
medical looks like it's more in control this year than other times. But I think it's gonna be what that is.
Anything else that you can think of that you'd like to bring
No, we
up?
covered a lot.
I think that covers the things that were on the agenda, Bill.
Yeah, the other thing I'd just like to maybe either in a private session or in a full session, whatever is appropriate to go, we should make a plan or point of going through, what is it that wasn't the way we wanted it to be in the past? And then second of all, I'd like to go back to that question I asked earlier, which is, I'm still troubled by who owns the fixed assets. Sort of who's responsible for, if a fixed asset was missing, it just got lost, who would be responsible for that in the town? Is that a department head? Is that the chief financial officer? Is it, I just don't know who would be responsible for that. Just who would say, I raise my hand, say, I'm responsible for that. I screwed up, or the case may be. So for example, if it was a fire truck or a police car or some lease or something, is that just a discussion of that? Who has ownership of the assets? Maybe it's dispersed amongst all the departments, which is fine. I just like to understand that, really from an audit standpoint. Are the assets fixed assets? Do they appear? Pick, I don't know, the assessors department or the tax department or the police department or whatever. Do they appear on their balance sheet, or where do they appear?
They appear, there is a fund just for fixed assets. It doesn't go into the operating general fund. It has its own fund that the town-owned ones, the sewer has their own on their balance sheet, and then the pool will have theirs. Each department has purchase their own assets. We track it through a certain, what we call project codes. So when we have approval for tax supported capital, bonded capital, we code it to a project code, and that's how we're able to track the assets to get them loaded into the system.
Does the department head know that that's happening, and they have visibility into that in the budgetary system? Do they know that they, over the last 10 years, we bought, $1 million or $10 million worth of assets for them? Do they care?
I can't speak to what they see. We're going out to see what reports they would like. I don't know. They know their assets, what they physically have. Have they seen reports of it? I don't know.
So if someone turned over, if a town employee turned over, how would they transfer that information from one regime to the next? I guess that you don't have to get into that now, but I'm just trying to understand that as we've been talking about fixed assets.
It's centralized. Josh is
But-
responsible for that.
No, it's moved out of Josh. It's moved, yeah, because we've changed all the positions around with the new employees, but we track it. The finance department tracks it to load it into the fixed asset system based on.
No, I understand that, but I'm just wondering about the department heads, just because at the end of the day, that's really where the usage is, right?
And we know down the road, and I've spoken to Joe about it in my earlier months here, that I want to really get into a fixed asset audit at some point down the road.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe we can talk about that. Maybe I'm off base on it, but great. Okay, well, so what do we think we would do? How will you and Joe communicate the schedule to us?
We could, once we come up with something, we will, I'll email it out
So what do you think? When do you think that might be?
the next week or two. Unless Joe sees an issue with it.
No, I think that's a reasonable timeline. We'll get through some of the stuff this week and then before the end of next week.
Yeah, because the next week, just sort of, today's the 12th, so the next week or two, I mean, it was either, sort of the 23rd before Christmas or the 27th after Christmas. But so can you give me a date by which we can expect to receive the schedule?
Well, the 21st, Joe, are you okay with the 21st, Wednesday?
Sure.
Perfect. Great. Thanks all. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Yeah. Or-
Yeah,
or
21st or earlier.
I think we're adjourned. Thanks all.
All right.